Hello, I'm at Wine Freedom on Floodgate Street in Digbeth. A premises licence was granted here last month following an application that I'd submitted to Birmingham City Council. And I'm going to be delivering the first of two talks today on applications for grants of premises licences. There are a number of technical hurdles that any applicant needs to jump through when applying for a premises licence. One is to submit an application form, included in which is the operating schedule, and I'll be dealing with that in my second talk on this subject. Associated with the application form itself is an application fee. And this is set at a level based on the rateable value of the premises. An applicant is also required to display a blue notice for a period of 28 days outside the premise. I say a blue notice, sometimes there's a requirement that it needs to be more than a single notice. In fact, recently I had to put 38 notices up for an application for a festival in Birmingham, but ordinarily a single blue notice for a period of 28 days starting the day after the application is submitted. There's also a requirement for a newspaper advert to be placed. That has to be placed within 10 working days of the application being submitted. The cost of those newspaper adverts varies enormously from area to area. In big cities it can be anything up to £1,000, and in rural areas it can be significantly less than that. Applicants also need to submit a plan with the layout of the premises when the works are completed. That needs to contain any fixed structures, firefighting equipment, and also needs to be to scale. There's no fixed scale that's required, but it needs to be to some scale or other. There are a couple of other ancillary requirements that applicants will need to fulfil. Firstly, they'll need to demonstrate that they have the right to work in the UK, and that can be done by way of passport or work permits, for example. And furthermore, whoever's going to be the designated premises supervisor, the DPS, will not need to sign a form consenting to that. Some local authorities don't necessarily insist on the latter of those two when the application is submitted, as long as it arrives before the end of the 28-day period, but others are much more strict and won't process the application until it is submitted. That deals with the relatively mundane aspects of applying for the grant of a premises licence. On the next occasion, I'll be discussing the operating schedule, which is right to say requires a little more craft. I'm here today at a premises in Aston in Birmingham. It was formerly licensed as, amongst other things, an art house cinema until a few years ago. And I was approached by Paul and Keith a few weeks ago. They were seeking a new licence on these premises for what is going to be called the Legacy Centre of Excellence. And I was instructed to apply for the licence on their behalf. I would say the feature that distinguishes a good application from one that's maybe not so good is the operating schedule. That is the part of the application form that deals with the steps that the applicant is proposing to take in order to promote the licensing objectives, and those proposed steps frequently in some way, shape or form get adopted as conditions on a licence should it be granted. There are a number of factors that applicants are required to consider when submitting the operating schedule as part of any application for the grant of a premises licence, included in which are the type of premises, type of licensable activities that are being applied for, whether the premises are situated in a residential area, any issues, particular issues around crime in the local area, and they're also required to have regard for each council's statement of licensing policy. I have to say some of these are more helpful than others in relation to applications under the Licensing Act, but certainly applicants should make every effort to take that into account. It's important that any of the proposed steps within the operating schedule are specific to the promotion of the licensing objectives and are tailored to the particular type of premises. I say that because frequently I encounter applications that land on my lap after they've been submitted, which quite simply are copy and paste jobs which don't serve any useful function in terms of getting the application over the line. Those proposed steps are ordinarily in some way, shape or form assimilated into the premises licence as conditions. On some occasions this simply isn't possible because what is being proposed simply isn't enforceable in any meaningful way, and those proposed steps would normally be disregarded. My advice to anybody applying for a premises licence is to approach the responsible authorities who would be most relevant to that application, and that would typically be the local police service and possibly environmental health should the premises be situated in a residential area in particular. Certainly from my point of view, I believe that most applications for the grant of a premises licence either succeed or fail before they've even been submitted. If you can have helpful and purposeful and productive conversations with the relevant responsible authorities in relation to that application, then it is much more likely to succeed, especially as you can iron out any issues between the parties before the application is submitted.